What would Martin Luther King say if he saw a powerful, influential billionaire black woman being reduced to nothing in front of a storefront? He didn't shout for equality just in his fiery speeches or in the marches through the streets of Montgomery. He saw racism where most pretend it doesn't exist, in the crooked smiles, in the soft words that hurt, in the looks that don't recognize. Do you understand what's behind all this? It wasn't about a purse, it wasn't about luxury, it wasn't about the store. It was the world saying once again to a black woman, "You don't belong here." Martin Luther King would say that this is exactly what they've been trying to do all along: erase, silence, make invisible. As if history, sweat, the steps of overcoming meant nothing when skin enters the room first. When color speaks before the biography, when racism doesn't need to raise its voice to keep killing inside a little bit. And you feel it, don't you? Because it's not just about Oprah. It's about every time someone walks into a space and realizes they've already been judged before even opening their mouth. It's about every step climbed with pain that still isn't enough to get through certain doors. Martin Luther King would look at you now and say, "Do you know why this hurts? Because it was never about a product, it was always about human value." When the salesperson said, "That purse is too expensive for you," what she really said was, "You don't belong in this place." And what Martin Luther King saw in these gestures was the continuation of the same system. The same one that prevented black people from sitting on buses now prevents them from touching what is expensive, from existing where it's too clean, from being considered part of something that has always been presented as unattainable. Have you ever felt this? That feeling of being in a place where everything says you shouldn't be there? Martin Luther King would call this sophisticated racism, the kind that doesn't shout, "Get out," but cuts slowly, that doesn't use handcuffs but pushes with eyes, that doesn't hit but brands. That makes it so that even those who have already won still have to prove they are human. And it tires you out, doesn't it? You carry your history like a crown, and yet there are people who only see the tone of your skin as a burden. There are people who look and see a threat where there is brilliance, see suspicion where there is merit, see exaggeration where there is pain. Martin Luther King believed that the worst violence was not physical but moral, the kind that makes you doubt yourself, the kind that denies presence, that denies existence. Because on that day, Oprah was not just prevented from seeing a purse. She was reminded that even being who she is, there is still a place where they expect her to stay, a place where her story doesn't matter, where her name doesn't protect, where her humanity is not recognized. And if they do this to Oprah, what do you think they do to you, to those who enter silently and leave swallowed by looks that judge without knowing? Martin Luther King would say to you, "You are worth more than this, but the world has yet to learn to see." And this blindness is constructed. It is fed. It is reinforced every day in experiences like this. It's a system that continues to operate without needing justification, that learns to hide the whip and deliver contempt wrapped in etiquette. But you, are you going to accept this silently? Will you continue to bow when another's gaze wants to bend you? Will you continue smiling at those who don't see you as an equal? Martin Luther King would say that change doesn't start with a protest. It starts when you decide not to dim yourself, when you decide to exist fully, even when the world insists on reducing you. He believed that everyone has a mission on this planet, and that this mission starts when you understand that you are not here to please but to transform, to uninstall the idea that there are places where you don't belong. Because you belong, you have the right to enter, to touch, to be treated with respect, to be seen. Martin Luther King would remind you that the true revolution is not the one that shouts. It's the one that remains, that occupies spaces, that does not retreat, that does not need to justify its presence. That is there because it has the right, because it is human. And that is exactly what scares those who profit from exclusion the most. Seeing you stand tall, seeing you occupy, seeing you not asking for permission. Martin Luther King would look you in the eye and say, "You are more than what is expected of you," and that's why they try to diminish you. But don't accept it. Don't fit into a mold that shrinks you. Don't accept less because they told you it's enough. Don't be silent when your presence is already a statement, because every time you enter a space and are treated as if you don't belong, a part of the world remains sick. And you were not made to accept sickness. You were made to heal, to expose, to inconvenience. Martin Luther King believed that justice begins with discomfort, with the dissatisfaction of knowing that you are invisible in a place where you should be celebrated, and you are not alone. Every time someone says, "This is too expensive for you," what they are really saying is, "You still haven't learned your place." But you have learned it. Your place is where you want to be. Where there's talent, where there's truth, where there's struggle. And if they tell you otherwise, it's because they haven't yet understood the value of those who don't have to shout to be heard. Martin Luther King always spoke about the power of love, but love, for him, was not weakness. It was strength. It was a shield. It was a weapon against a world that tries to erase. And loving yourself, loving your color, your story, your path, is the first step to changing everything. So don't bow down. Be present. Be inconvenient. Be a living reminder that equality was not a favor. It was conquered. And if they still try to take that away from you, then the fight is not over. But it is also not lost, because as long as you exist, she continues. And as long as you exist with an awareness of who you are, history does not repeat itself with impunity. Because Martin Luther King never believed that freedom was a gift that would be willingly given. He knew that freedom needs to be taken. It needs to be occupied. It needs to be sustained through fatigue, discomfort, and daily resistance. Do you feel that weight? That silence that accumulates when skin is still a problem where presence should be enough. He would talk to you not to console you, but to ignite you. Because the world doesn't need more voices that cry softly. It needs presence, whole people, bodies that do not bow down to judgment disguised as politeness, people who are not ashamed to disrupt a system that feeds on exclusion. Can you see what lies behind what happened in that store? That was a cruel reminder that prejudice has learned to disguise itself. It no longer comes with chains, but with smiles. It doesn't come with direct insult, but with doubt in the eyes. It doesn't say go away, but insinuates that you shouldn't be there. Martin Luther King already said that what worried him the most was not the shout of the wicked, but the silence of the good. And if you see this happening and think it's normal, if you watch someone being diminished and feel nothing, then maybe the system has already taken residence within you. But you still feel, don't you? You still feel that pang in your chest when you realize they are measuring you by criteria you never accepted, that they are putting you in a place you fought so hard to escape from. He would speak firmly, with a voice that didn't need hate to be sharp, and he would say, "It's not about winning at their game, it's about transforming the game. Because there is no point in being accepted into a system that still wants you to apologize for existing. There is no point in achieving success if they still treat your presence as an accident. There is no point in opening doors if at every step you have to prove you are worthy of having entered. You are tired of proving yourself, right? Proving that you are polite, that you are competent, that you are trustworthy, that you are human. And Martin Luther King, looking at you, would say something that few have the courage to say: you don't have to prove anything. Your existence is already enough. Your story is already valid. Your color does not need justification. He saw racism not as the mistake of a few, but as the structure of many. And therefore, every gesture that makes you back down, every phrase that cuts you, every look that dehumanizes you, is part of something much larger. It is part of a project that still tries to function as if you were merely tolerated and never belonging. But you do belong, not because they allowed it, because you conquered it, because you are here, because you still hold your head high even when the world pushes you down. Have you noticed how everything that comes from black people has to be bigger to be accepted? It has to be impeccable. It has to be extraordinary. It has to be twice as good to be worth half as much. Martin Luther King knew that this was not merit, it was camouflaged violence. The fact that we need to be amazing to be treated with the minimum of respect says it all. And when even Oprah is treated as if she were out of place, then it's clear. No matter how high you rise, if the structure still sees you as someone who should have stayed where you were. Does this make you angry? Good, because the anger that recognizes injustice is the first step towards change. But it is not an anger that destroys. It is an anger that builds, that channels, that transforms pain into awareness, that transforms indignation into movement. Martin Luther King always spoke of nonviolence as a strategy, but he never confused that with passivity. It wasn't about staying quiet. It was about speaking up with courage. It was about not accepting scraps. It was about entering places with dignity, even when everything there was designed to make you feel like a mistake. And that's why this scene in the store isn't just a scene. It's a mirror that shows that racism today knows how to smile. It knows how to serve coffee. It knows how to say good morning while diminishing you with its eyes. You need to stay alert. Because current exclusion has learned to be silent, to dress well, to appear normal, and if you're not awake, you start to accept it. You start to believe that maybe you really shouldn't have asked to see that purse, that maybe you're exaggerating, that maybe it wasn't about racism. But Martin Luther King would tell you, don't minimize, don't ignore. Don't explain away what was done to erase you. Because every time you let it pass, the world learns that it can continue. Every time you stay silent, the system understands that it worked. Every time you convince yourself that you're being too sensitive, you're actually distancing yourself from your most precious sensitivity, the ability to realize when you're being hurt. And the worst kind of violence is the one that convinces you that you're exaggerating. But you know, you feel it. You recognize the look, the tone, the hesitation, the subtle denial. And if that enrages you, that's good. Martin Luther King wasn't killed for saying nice things. He was killed because he spoke uncomfortable truths. He would look at you now and ask, are you going to keep accepting spaces where only parts of you fit, or will you demand a world where you fit entirely? You can't keep accepting invitations that require silence as the entry fee. You can't smile where your tears are invisible. You can't sit where your presence is still viewed as a concession. Do you understand? It's not about luxury. It's about rights. It's not about display. It's about identity. It's not about offense. It's about an entire system that still decides who is seen and who is merely tolerated. And if you are still merely tolerated, then the world hasn't changed that much after all. Martin Luther King said that an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And if you watch this kind of scene and think, but this doesn't affect me, then you're forgetting that the next face judged could be yours or someone you care about. Because it's not about an exception, it's about a pattern that still breathes, that still feeds on silence, that still operates even when you try to convince yourself that everything is fine. But it's not. And if you don't see it, the system thanks you. It lives off your distraction, off your exhaustion, off your resignation. But Martin Luther King believed in something that cannot be bought, something that cannot be sold, something that does not bend, your dignity. And this dignity needs to be exercised even when it is not recognized. Because every step you take, even when you feel unwelcome, is a scream that echoes for those who can no longer walk. And every time you refuse to be erased, you become living proof that there is still hope. Do you feel the weight of this? Because if you do, then you're on the right path. It doesn't ease, it doesn't soften, it doesn't explain, it just walks, with strength, with faith, with the certainty that no one has the right to decide your place in the world but you. Martin Luther King would say that there is an urgency in you, an urgency to be whole, an urgency not to accept spaces where you only fit in pieces, and that this urgency needs to be respected, needs to be honored, needs to be amplified. Are you ready to keep hearing his voice echo within you? You saw it, didn't you? You saw with your own eyes how everything can seem normal until it's not, until the color of your skin comes first, before your name, your story, what you've accomplished. And there's no point in trying to justify the gesture, soften the words, pretending it was just a misunderstanding. Because you feel it. Because you know the weight of being reduced even when you've carried twice as much. And the most painful part is realizing that the world still asks if it's an exaggeration. Have you ever asked yourself how many times you've had to hold back? How many times you've avoided responding, making a gesture or looking directly, just so you wouldn't feed the fear the other person already has of you? Fear of what, after all? Of presence, of truth, of strength? It's always like this. When you enter, they already expect you to leave. When you speak, they already think you're attacking. When you grow, they want to remind you where you came from. And then they throw cold smiles, poisoned courtesies, disguised rejections. They don't send you away, but they do everything to make you not want to stay. Have you noticed that for many people, it's still hard to look into your eyes? Because if they really looked, they would see everything they tried to erase: dignity, power, resistance. And there are people who can't bear to see what they've spent their lives trying to deny. That's why you shouldn't be fooled by the elegant silence. That's how racism disguises itself today. It dresses in civility, organizes itself in invisible rules, feeds on the discomfort you swallow in silence. And if you don't speak up, it grows. If you don't confront it, it spreads. So tell me, how long are you going to accept adapting to a space that was never made to fully welcome you? How long will you lower your gaze while they trample on your presence with velvet gloves? The question is no longer, why do they still do this? The real question is, why do you still have to endure it? And that's why now you can't be polite about the pain anymore. You can no longer be understanding of prejudice. You can't stay silent in the face of what tries every day to convince you that you are less. You are not less. You never were. And now is not the time to bow down. The ones who need to bow down are those who still think they can define value by looking at skin. Those who still measure respect by the last name. Those who still get offended by your entire existence because they never had the courage to be half of what you are. So, look at me and answer, are you going to keep accepting being erased? Or will you start making noise with your presence? Because now is the moment not to speak beautifully, but to speak firmly, to say that you won't accept it anymore. That you don't want to smile anymore where you don't feel seen. That you won't walk with your head down out of fear of offending, because your existence, just as it is, already offends those who never knew how to deal with the truth. You have a choice. Pretend you don't see. Or see with both eyes open, even if it irritates you, even if it hurts you. Because that's the only way we change anything. And if you've come this far, it's because you already know what you need to do, and because you feel deep inside that you're no longer willing to live halfway just to please those who never wanted to see you whole. Now share this. Send it to those who need reminding that they are not alone. Comment on what you have seen, what you've been through. And if this message moved you, it's because you too carry this pain. So don't let it die inside you. Expose it. Expand it. And let the world hear it, even if it doesn't like it. Because if it's to disturb, let it be for existing truthfully.